The incoming president and vice president are standing firm behind who they hope will lead the Department of Defense next year. In a social media post Friday morning, President-elect Donald Trump said, quote, Pete Hegseth is doing very well. His support is strong and deep. He went on to say Hegseth is, quote, a winner, and there is nothing that can be done to change that. A number of allegations against Hegseth have come to light since he was announced as a defense secretary pick, including accusations of sexual assault and workplace misconduct, all of which Hegseth denies. Vice President-elect J.D. Vance also defended Trump's pick and expressed confidence that Hegseth will get confirmed, despite hesitancy by some Republican lawmakers to fully back him.
Pete Hegseth is going to get his appearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee, not a sham hearing before the American media. We believe that Pete Hegseth is the right guy to lead the Department of Defense. That's why President Trump nominated him. We're not abandoning this nomination.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killion has left Capitol Hill. She's here in the broadcast center with me now. Nicole, you have been running all over Washington, chasing down Hegseth, the members of Congress that he's been meeting with. When we hear that tweet from the president-elect that the support is strong and deep, does that seem accurate to you, given the people you've spoken with?
Well, it seems accurate from the perspective of talking to Pete Hegseth. I mean, earlier this week, I asked him, and this was amid those reports, that the president-elect might be looking at Governor DeSantis as an alternative. And you know what Pete Hegseth told me is, look, I have talked to the president-elect. He has told me he is behind me all the way. Well, now we have that confirmation with a post like this today, with the president-elect calling him a winner. That being said, we also know that the president-elect is not necessarily, making a lot of calls on Hegseth's behalf, but still having this public endorsement out there, I think, is a signal to many lawmakers that they are moving forward with this pick. And so it really kind of now is in the senators' court, if you will, to decide whether they're going to support Hegseth or not.
Does it seem to you, based off of who you've been speaking with, that
I mean, look, what I would say is it's early in the process, right? I mean, the confirmation hearing is not going to happen tomorrow. This is going to happen early next year. Now, granted, our reporting shows that if that vote were held today, there are some senators who would likely withhold their support. Earlier this week, it was at least 4. We don't know if that list has grown, but that in and of itself could potentially be enough to sink a nomination like Pete Hegseth. So if that number holds, if it grows, then yes, he's going to be in some serious trouble, which also may be why the president-elect could be considering other potential options. But I think they do want to give Hegseth a little bit of space and runway to try to meet with senators. I mean, he met with a lot of people this week. It was just meeting after meeting after meeting. And that, quite frankly, that's what all of these nominees have to do to try to make the best impression. Again, whether or not it works remains to be seen. I mean, we've seen senators like Joni Ernst who still have not committed to backing someone like Pete Hegseth. And
but
she is somebody
also in consideration.
Well, she also told me that Hegseth is a nominee, so she doesn't seem to be entertaining that right now. But that being said, I mean, she is somebody who's going to be critical, as are a number of these other female senators. And right now, many of them are still on the fence.
Nicole, with the time we have left, let's talk a little bit about Democrats. We've seen, particularly in the House, that there is a move among Democrats to replace some of the older members of leadership with younger members. AOC is one who has raised her hand, saying she would like to be chief on the Oversight Committee. What is going on, and how much of that is a reflection of what we saw play out with Biden and this last election?
Well, certainly on the part of Democrats, there are still a lot of ongoing conversations about the path forward, and they continue to do soul searching following the results of the election. And so now that there are these opportunities within leadership, particularly among some of these committees, there is that discussion about whether or not there needs to be a generational shift within the party. And I think you're seeing that not only with someone like AOC, who is trying to vie as ranking member for the Oversight Committee, challenging somebody like Jerry Connolly, who is a bit older, but, Connolly has said this is going to be a civil race. We'll be friends at the end of the day, but we are seeing that play out. For instance, Judiciary, you have Jamie Raskin, who now is vying for that post over Jerry Nadler. Nadler has now endorsed him. So it is part of this ongoing discussion that Democrats are having about who they believe should be leading the party and these critical committees going forward, particularly with the incoming Trump administration.
Nicole Killion, love all the great work that you do out on Capitol Hill, but also love it when you come to visit us
great
here
to
in
see
New
you,
York.
Lana.
Thank you.